Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Israel stood outside the entrance, the thumping bass pulsing through his bones, as if beckoning him to join the merriment within. Anticipation danced in his veins as he clutched his messenger bag, its contents precious and anxiously waiting to be unveiled. He inhaled deeply, straightening his attire, a simple gray tee and jeans, before mustering the courage to approach the doorstep. Each footfall amplified the sound of his sneakers against the concrete, a stark contrast to the lively bustle beyond the threshold. As he raised his hand to knock, the door swung open, revealing Mason, his dearest companion, brandishing a red solo cup with unrestrained revelry. "You're here! Don't just stand there, Israel! Join the chaos!" "Thought you might bail on me again." "Wouldn't miss it," Israel replied, accepting the one-armed hug that nearly knocked the wind from his lungs. He clutched his bag closer, praying the contents wouldn't shift noticeably. "Everyone's out back. Tina brought her famous sangria." Mason gestured toward the kitchen, already turning to greet another arriving guest. Israel nodded, slipping past clusters of people toward the relative quiet of the hallway bathroom. His heart hammered against his ribs as he locked the door behind him, finally alone with his secret. From his bag, he carefully extracted the auburn lace front wig he'd saved 3 paychecks to purchase. The synthetic hair caught the light, appearing almost natural as he held it reverently between his hands. For months, he'd practiced applying it in his own bathroom mirror, but tonight would be different. Tonight, for just a few stolen moments, Eila would emerge in Mason's bathroom, away from the prying eyes of his one-bedroom apartment where the walls felt too thin and the neighbors too curious. Israel turned the wig over in his hands, running his fingers through the soft strands. The color reminded him of autumn leaves, warm and inviting against his pale skin tone. He'd researched endlessly before choosing this particular shade, something that would complement his features without looking artificial. He glanced around Mason's bathroom, twice the size of his own, with its ornate mirror framed in brushed nickel and spacious marble countertop, perfect for what he needed to do. From the bag, Israel retrieved a small makeup kit, some bobby pins, and a folded blue cocktail dress he'd noticed hanging forgotten in Mason's sister's old closet during his last visit. Amanda had moved out years ago, leaving behind various clothing items Mason had never bothered to clear out. Israel had quickly stashed it in his backpack when Mason went to answer the door, promising himself he'd return it untouched. But now, the silky material called to him. Just once, he told himself. Just to see. With practiced movements, Israel secured his natural brown hair beneath a wig cap and carefully positioned the auburn wig atop his head. He painstakingly adjusted the lace front until it lay perfectly against his forehead, blending seamlessly with his skin. The transformation had begun. His fingers worked quickly, applying minimal makeup, just enough to soften his features. A touch of foundation to smooth his complexion, a hint of blush to warm his cheekbones, and a swipe of tinted lip balm. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would take long to remove. Next came the dress. Israel slipped out of his jeans and t-shirt, folding them neatly on the counter. The blue fabric whispered against his skin as he pulled it over his head, adjusting it until it draped correctly across his frame. The color reminded him of twilight skies, deep and mysterious. He turned to face the mirror, and Eila stared back at him, his breath caught in his throat. "There you are," he whispered to his reflection, a smile tugging at his lips. The auburn hair cascaded over his shoulders, framing his face in warm waves. The blue dress accentuated his slender build, making him appear softer, gentler somehow. In these private moments, Israel felt truly himself, or rather, herself. Eila wasn't just a character he played, she was a part of him he rarely allowed to surface. Israel pulled out his phone, angling it carefully to capture his transformation. The bathroom lighting cast a flattering glow as he snapped several photos, trying different poses, different smiles. Evidence of these moments was precious to him, images he could look at later when Eila needed to be tucked away again. The music from the party seemed distant now, a reminder of the world continuing without him, unaware of the small revolution happening behind this locked door. He wondered what it would be like to simply walk out there, to join the party as Eila. The thought sent equal parts thrill and terror through his veins. A sudden knock jolted him from his reverie. "Hey, someone in there? Lines forming out here." The voice belonged to Cassandra, Mason's girlfriend. "Just a minute!" Israel called back, panic rising in his chest. He fumbled with the zipper of the dress, hands suddenly clumsy with fear. "Israel, is that you?" Cassandra's voice sharpened with recognition. "You okay in there?" "Fine. Be right out." His voice cracked as he hastily changed back into his jeans and t-shirt, wiping at his face with a dampened tissue. The makeup came off easily enough, but he felt exposed, as if Cassandra could somehow see through the door to his true self. In his rush, Israel stuffed the dress back into his bag, along with the makeup kit. He glanced in the mirror one last time, ensuring no trace of Eila remained visible. His brown hair stuck up at odd angles from being under the wig cap, and he quickly smoothed it down with wet fingers. Another knock, more insistent this time. "Coming!" He unlocked the door, plastering an apologetic smile on his face as he slipped past Cassandra. "Dude, did you fall in?" She teased, but her eyes narrowed slightly as she took in his flushed face. "Sorry, stomach's been acting up," he lied, already moving down the hallway toward the safety of the crowded living room. He needed air, needed to disappear among the partygoers until his heartbeat returned to normal. It wasn't until he was halfway through a beer, nodding along to some story Mason's coworker was telling, that the realization hit him like a physical blow. The wig. In his panic, he'd left the auburn wig on Mason's bathroom counter. Ice flooded his veins as he tried to maintain his composure, mind racing. He couldn't go back for it now. Cassandra had seen him leave. And what if someone else had already found it? The expensive lace front, with its perfectly styled auburn waves, would be impossible to explain away as anything other than what it was. For the remainder of the evening, Israel moved through the party like a ghost, laughing at jokes he didn't hear, drinking beer that tasted like nothing. Every time someone emerged from the hallway bathroom, he tensed, waiting for the inevitable questions, the sidelong glances, the whispers. But nothing happened. As the party wound down, Israel made his excuses and left, the weight of his secret and the absence of his cherished wig, making each step heavier than the last. Morning came with the harsh light of reality and a text notification that made Israel's stomach drop. He fumbled for his phone, squinting at the screen. A photo of his auburn wig, carefully placed on Mason's coffee table. Below it, a single question mark. Israel stared at the message, equal parts relief and terror washing over him. Relief that Mason had found the wig rather than some random party guest. terror at the conversation that would inevitably follow. His thumbs hovered over the screen as he contemplated his response. Denial seemed pointless, the truth terrifying. But Mason was his best friend. If anyone deserved honesty, it was him. "That's mine," he typed finally. "Can I come over to get it?" The 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. Reappeared. Disappeared again. Israel held his breath. "Sure, coffee's on." 2 simple words that carried the weight of acceptance, or at least the promise of conversation. Israel dressed quickly in a forest green Henley and dark jeans, running nervous fingers through his brown hair as he headed for the door. The drive to Mason's house took exactly 7 minutes, but today it felt like an eternity. Israel rehearsed explanations in his head, then discarded them as insufficient or dishonest. By the time he parked in Mason's driveway, he'd decided on the simplest approach: the truth. Mason opened the door before Israel could knock, coffee mug in hand and expression unreadable. "Come on in," he said, stepping aside. "Place is still a mess from last night." Israel followed him into the living room, where empty bottles and forgotten cups cluttered every surface. And there, in the center of the coffee table, sat his auburn wig, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly at home. "So," Mason said, settling into the armchair across from the couch where Israel perched nervously. "You want to tell me about this?" Israel took a deep breath. "It's a wig." Mason raised an eyebrow. "I gathered that much on my own, surprisingly enough." "It's mine," Israel continued, hands clasped tightly between his knees. I like to wear it sometimes." "Okay." Mason sipped his coffee, waiting. "And other things, like dresses, makeup." The words felt sticky in Israel's throat, but once they started, they seemed to gain momentum. "I've been doing it for years, actually. Since college. I just never told anyone because I didn't know how to explain it." Mason nodded slowly. "So this is like a drag thing, or something else?" Israel stared at his hands. "Something else. When I put on that wig and wear different clothes, I feel like I'm becoming who I'm supposed to be." "Her name is Eila." The name hung in the air between them, the first time Israel had ever spoken it aloud to another person. He felt dizzy with vulnerability, as if he'd opened his chest and exposed his beating heart. Mason set down his coffee mug. "Eila," he repeated, testing the name. "That's pretty similar to Israel." "It felt right," Israel admitted, "like an extension of myself rather than someone completely different." "And the blue dress?" Israel winced. "I borrowed it from Amanda's old closet. I was going to put it back. I'm sorry." To Israel's surprise, Mason chuckled. "Man, Amanda would lose her mind if she knew you fit into that better than she did. She bought it for some formal and complained all night that it made her look boxy." The tension in the room eased slightly, and Israel felt the tightness in his chest begin to loosen. "You're not weirded out?" Mason considered this, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I mean, it's unexpected. But you're still you, right? Still the same person who helped me move 3 times and drove me to the hospital when I broke my ankle trying to jump off your garage roof." "You were convinced you could parkour," Israel remembered, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I told you it was a bad idea." "You did," Mason agreed.
And now I'm telling you that hiding Eila, was probably a bad idea too. At least from me.
Israel reached for the wig, fingers gently smoothing the auburn strands.
I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid you'd look at me differently. I am looking at you differently, Mason said. But not in the way you think. I'm seeing you more clearly now. Like I finally understand why you always seemed so, I don't know, half present sometimes. Like part of you was elsewhere.
Israel nodded, throat tight with emotion.
She was. Eila was waiting.
Mason leaned forward, elbows on his knees.
So, what happens now? Do you want to be Eila more often? All the time? I don't really know how this works.
I don't either, Israel admitted. I've never let myself think beyond these stolen moments. It always seemed impossible.
Well, it's not impossible, Mason said firmly. You have options, and whatever you decide, I've got your back.
Israel's vision blurred with unexpected tears.
Thank you,
he whispered. Mason stood up, crossing to a nearby drawer and rummaging inside. He returned with a small, silver key.
Here,
he said, pressing it into Israel's palm.
Spare key to my place. Next time you want some privacy for Eila to exist, you don't have to wait for a party. Just come over when I'm at work if you want.
Israel stared at the key, the weight of Mason's acceptance hitting him fully. I don't know what to say.
You could start by promising never to borrow my sister's clothes again without asking, Mason suggested with a grin. But maybe we could go shopping instead? Get Eila her own blue dress?
The suggestion was so unexpected, so freely offered, that Israel couldn't contain the laugh that bubbled up from his chest. You'd do that? Go shopping with me for dresses? Mason shrugged. Why not? I help my girlfriends shop all the time. I'm actually pretty good at picking out stuff that fits well. And besides, he added, more seriously,
I want to meet Eila properly. She seems like an important person in my best friend's life.
She is, Israel said softly.
She's me, but also more than me somehow.
Mason nodded as if this made perfect sense.
Then it's settled. Next Saturday we go shopping. And afterward, if you want, Eila can come to dinner. No pressure. Just an option.
Israel clutched the wig to his chest, feeling as if something profound had shifted in his universe. For years, Eila had existed in shadows, in locked bathroom doors and secretive online purchases. Now, someone else knew her name. Someone wanted to meet her.
I'd like that, he said finally. I think Eila would like that too.
2 weeks later, Israel stood in Mason's living room, heart racing as he adjusted the collar of his cream-colored blouse. The shopping trip had been surprisingly fun. Mason had an eye for styles that flattered Israel's frame, and together they'd assembled a small wardrobe for Eila. The cream blouse, a burgundy pencil skirt, black flats, and even a simple emerald cocktail dress for special occasions, whatever those might be.
You nearly ready?
Mason called from the kitchen, where he was putting the finishing touches on dinner.
Food's almost done.
Almost, Israel replied, turning to examine his reflection in the hallway mirror. The auburn wig sat perfectly atop his head, the warm waves framing his carefully made-up face. He'd gotten better at makeup through endless YouTube tutorials. Nothing dramatic, just enough to soften his features and bring out his eyes. The burgundy skirt hugged his hips, ending just below his knees in a manner that felt both modest and feminine. The cream blouse added warmth to his complexion, its subtle details. Pearl buttons, slight gathering at the shoulders, elevating the simple outfit. Mason appeared in the hallway, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He stopped, a slow smile spreading across his face.
Wow,
he said simply.
Eila, I presume?
Israel, no, Eila now, nodded, a shy smile tugging at her painted lips. Hello, she said softly, her voice pitched slightly higher than usual, a cadence she'd practiced alone for months.
It's nice to finally meet you,
Mason said, extending his hand formally.
Dinner's ready whenever you are.
The simple courtesy of the introduction, the matter-of-fact acceptance, made Eila's chest tighten with emotion. Thank you, she managed.
For everything.
Mason shrugged, but his eyes were kind.
Nothing to thank me for. Just being a friend.
He gestured toward the dining room.
Shall we?
Dinner was surprisingly easy. They talked about the same things Israel and Mason always discussed. Work, movies, Mason's latest dating disaster. But something was different. Eila found herself laughing more freely, gesturing more expressively, as if being acknowledged as herself had unlocked some inner door.
You seem happy,
Mason observed as they cleared the dishes.
More comfortable in your own skin.
Eila considered this, auburn hair falling forward as she loaded the dishwasher. I am, she admitted. It's like, for years, I've been trying to exist in a space that was too small. And now I can finally stretch. Mason nodded thoughtfully.
So, what's next?
The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities Eila had barely allowed herself to consider. I don't know, she admitted. This is already more than I ever thought possible.
But not enough,
Mason guessed, perceptive as always. Eila straightened, smoothing down her burgundy skirt. No, she agreed quietly. Not enough. The conversation was interrupted by the doorbell, sending a bolt of panic through Eila's body. She froze, eyes wide.
Relax,
Mason said quickly.
It's just Cassandra. I told her you might be here as Eila. She's been dying to meet you properly.
You told her? Eila's voice rose in alarm.
Only that you sometimes present as female and go by Eila,
Mason explained hurriedly.
No details, but she saw you in the bathroom that night and figured something was up. She's cool, I promise.
Before Eila could protest further, Mason opened the door, revealing Cassandra clutching a bottle of wine and wearing an expectant expression. Hi, she said, eyes immediately finding Eila behind Mason. Oh wow, you look amazing! That color is perfect with your complexion. The simple, genuine compliment diffused some of Eila's tension. Thank you, she replied, self-consciously touching the auburn waves that framed her face. I brought wine, Cassandra announced, sweeping into the living room with familiar ease. I figured we could all use a drink while we plan your coming out party. Eila blinked. My what? Cassandra laughed, already heading for the kitchen to retrieve glasses. Not literally, unless you want one. I meant more like your debut, your introduction to the world as Eila. Mason shot Eila an apologetic look. Cass has a tendency to jump several steps ahead. We don't have to plan anything you're not ready for. But as they settled into the living room with glasses of wine, Eila found herself warming to Cassandra's enthusiasm. There was something freeing about her matter-of-fact approach, her complete lack of awkwardness. So, Have you thought about going out? Cassandra asked, tucking her legs beneath her on the couch. As Eila, I mean. Eila swirled the wine in her glass. Not really. I've never been anywhere but my apartment, and now Mason's place. Well, that's a crime, Cassandra declared. You're gorgeous. You should be seen. The compliment sent a warm glow through Eila's chest. I wouldn't know where to go, she admitted. Or what to do.
Start small, Mason suggested.
Dinner somewhere quiet, or maybe a movie? Cassandra shook her head emphatically. Movies are terrible for first outings. You sit in the dark for 2 hours and don't interact with anyone. Dinner's better, but still pretty intense for a first time. She tapped her finger against her lips thoughtfully. What about the art walk downtown next weekend? It's casual, outdoors. You can leave anytime, and there's enough going on that nobody pays much attention to anyone else. Eila considered this, trying to imagine herself strolling through downtown in her burgundy skirt and cream blouse, auburn hair catching the sunlight. The image sent equal parts terror and exhilaration through her veins. Maybe, she said cautiously, if you both came with me. Obviously, Cassandra replied, as if this had been a given.
We'll be your security detail. Your very fashionable security detail,
Mason added with a grin. The wine and conversation flowed freely after that, plans taking shape with each passing hour. By the time Cassandra left, kissing Eila's cheek as casually as she would any female friend, the art walk outing had been definitively scheduled.
You okay?
Mason asked as they watched Cassandra's taillights disappear down the street. That was a lot all at once. Eila nodded slowly, the auburn wig shifting slightly with the movement. It was, she agreed. But in a good way, I think. Like ripping off a bandage.
You can always change your mind about the art walk,
Mason reminded her.
No pressure.
Eila turned to face her friend, gratitude welling up in her chest. Thank you for creating a space where Eila can exist, she said softly. I didn't realize how much I needed that. Mason squeezed her shoulder gently.
Eila was always there. She just needed room to breathe.
The week leading up to the art walk passed in a blur of anticipation and preparation. Eila practiced walking in her flats until the movements felt natural, spent hours on makeup tutorials to perfect a daytime look appropriate for the occasion, and had Mason take dozens of photos from different angles so she could scrutinize her appearance for any telltale signs that might draw unwanted attention.
You're overthinking this,
Mason told her gently after the 3rd hour of photo analysis.
You look like a woman, a beautiful one at that. No one's going to look twice. Or if they do, it'll be because they're admiring your style.
Eila wanted to believe him, but 30 years of conditioning was hard to overcome. What if someone recognizes me? She fretted. What if they know Israel?
Then they'll either figure it out or they won't,
Mason said pragmatically.
And either way, who cares? You're not doing anything wrong.
The morning of the art walk dawned bright and clear, a perfect early autumn day with just enough crispness in the air to justify the burgundy cardigan Cassandra had insisted would complete the look. Eila stood in Mason's bathroom, carefully applying foundation, her hands steadier than she'd expected. You've got this, she told her reflection, auburn hair catching the light as she tilted her head. Just breathe. By the time Mason and Cassandra arrived to pick her up, Eila was dressed in her cream blouse, burgundy skirt, and matching cardigan, black flats polished to a shine on her feet. She'd kept her makeup subtle, foundation, a hint of blush, mascara, and a rose-tinted lip balm. "Perfect," Cassandra declared upon seeing her. "Classy, feminine, but not trying too hard. You ready?" Eila nodded, clutching the small purse she'd borrowed from Cassandra with nervous fingers. "As I'll ever be." The drive downtown was filled with casual chatter designed to distract her from her mounting anxiety. Mason recounted a work mishap involving the copy machine and a new intern, while Cassandra detailed her latest battle with her landlord over a leaky ceiling. By the time they parked, Eila had almost forgotten to be terrified. Almost. "Deep breath," Mason murmured as they approached the first vendor stalls of the art walk. "We're just 3 friends enjoying some local art. Nothing complicated." Eila nodded, straightening her shoulders and adjusting her auburn hair. 3 friends," she repeated. "Right." The first few minutes were the hardest, each glance from a passerby sending a jolt of adrenaline through her system, each interaction with a vendor requiring conscious effort to maintain her slightly higher-pitched voice. But gradually, remarkably, the tension began to ease. No one stared. No one pointed or whispered. People smiled politely, complimented her cardigan, asked if she'd like to sign up for an artist's mailing list. Ordinary interactions that carried extraordinary weight for Eila. "See?" Cassandra whispered as they moved between stalls. "You're doing great! Totally blending in!" And she was. With each passing minute, Eila felt her confidence growing, her movements becoming more natural, her smile more genuine. She found herself genuinely admiring watercolor landscapes, debating the merits of different pottery techniques with a gray-haired artisan, even offering her opinion when Mason couldn't decide between 2 abstract prints. "The blue one," she said decisively. "It matches your living room better, and the composition is more balanced." The vendor nodded approvingly. "Your friend has a good eye," she told Mason, wrapping the chosen piece in tissue paper. "That's my favorite too." The simple validation, being referred to as Mason's friend, having her opinion valued, sent a warm glow through Eila's chest. This was what she'd been missing all these years. The ability to exist in the world as her authentic self, to interact without the constant filter of pretense. They stopped for coffee at a small cafe halfway through the art walk, claiming a table in the corner where Eila could sit with her back to the wall, still cautious despite her growing comfort.
"So,"
Mason asked once they were settled with their drinks.
"How does it feel, being out in the world as Eila?"
Eila wrapped her hands around her mug, the warmth seeping into her fingers.
"Surreal," she admitted.
"But also, right, like I've been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale." Cassandra reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "You look happy, more present somehow." "I feel present," Eila agreed. "For once, I'm not thinking about how I should be standing or talking or gesturing. I'm just being." The rest of the afternoon passed in a pleasant haze of art, conversation, and growing confidence. By the time they returned to Mason's house, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink, Eila felt transformed, not just externally, but internally as well. "Thank you," she said, as they settled in Mason's living room, kicking off her flats with a sigh of relief.
"Both of you, for today, for everything."
"Don't mention it,"
Mason replied, hanging his new art print on the wall with critical attention to its alignment.
"It was fun, and honestly,
You seemed more yourself today than I've seen you in years. Cassandra nodded in agreement. Eila suits you. She's always been there, hasn't she? Just waiting for her moment. Yes, Eila said softly, running gentle fingers through her auburn hair. She has. The weeks that followed brought more firsts. Dinner at a quiet restaurant where the waiter called her ma'am without a second glance. A trip to the mall where she tried on dresses in a women's fitting room, nervous but determined. Coffee with Cassandra where they discussed everything from politics to relationships with the easy intimacy of female friendship. With each experience, the boundaries between Israel and Eila began to blur. The careful compartmentalization that had defined his life for so long started to feel unnecessary, even artificial. Israel found himself incorporating subtle elements of Eila into his daily life. Gentler gestures, softer speech patterns, a quiet confidence that came from finally acknowledging all aspects of himself. And increasingly, Israel found himself wondering what it would mean to let Eila take the lead permanently. The question came to a head one evening as he sat in his apartment, the auburn wig carefully placed on its stand beside him. He'd been journaling, another suggestion from Cassandra, who thought it might help him process his evolving identity.
Who am I really?
He wrote, the pen hesitating between words. Israel or Eila, or both? Can I continue living this divided existence, or is it time to choose? The answer, when it came, felt less like a decision and more like a recognition of truth that had always been there, waiting to be acknowledged. The next day, Israel called Mason.
I need to talk to you about something important,
he said, voice steady despite the momentous nature of what he was about to share.
Can I come over tonight? As Eila, it feels right to have this conversation as her.
Mason, attuned to the seriousness in his friend's tone, agreed immediately.
Of course. Dinner at 7?
When Eila arrived, dressed in the emerald cocktail dress they'd purchased on that first shopping trip, auburn hair styled in loose waves around her face, Mason took one look at her expression and poured 2 generous glasses of whiskey.
Okay,
he said, settling onto the couch across from her.
What's on your mind?
Eila took a deep breath, hands smoothing the fabric of her emerald dress. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began. About who I am, about who I want to be. Mason nodded, giving her space to continue.
For years, I've been living this double life. Israel in public, Eila in private. And it worked, sort of. It was better than nothing.
She paused, gathering her thoughts. But these past few weeks, being Eila more openly, having people see me and accept me as her, it's changed everything. I feel whole in a way I never have before.
So what are you saying?
Mason asked, gently, though his expression suggested he already knew. Eila met his gaze steadily. I'm saying I want to transition, fully. I want to live as Eila all the time. The words hung in the air between them, enormous and irreversible. Saying them aloud sent equal parts terror and relief coursing through her body. Mason was quiet for a moment, then raised his glass.
To Eila,
he said simply.
Who was always there, even when the rest of us couldn't see her.
Tears sprang to Eila's eyes as she touched her glass to his.
You're not surprised, she observed.
Only surprised it took you this long to know what seemed obvious to me,
Mason replied, with a small smile.
Every time you've been Eila these past weeks, you've been more alive, more present, more... You. Israel always seemed like he was wearing a costume. Eila never does.
They talked long into the night, discussing practical matters, telling family, handling work, legal name changes, but underlying all the logistics was a current of certainty that hadn't been there before. This wasn't just about wearing different clothes or using a different name. This was about aligning her external reality with her internal truth. As midnight approached, Mason walked her to the door.
You know this won't be easy,
he said, concern evident in his voice.
Some people won't understand.
Eila nodded, the weight of the auburn wig familiar and comforting on her head. I know, but I can't go back to living half a life. In a world that often feels too small for those who dare to be different, Eila took the first step towards expansion, towards a future where she wouldn't be confined by the shadows anymore. That night, as she slipped under the covers, her heart, once heavy with secrets, now felt light, as if a weight had been lifted, replaced by determination. She thought of her family, her friends, and the unknown that lay ahead. In the silence of her room, a soft smile formed on her lips. Tomorrow was a new day, and for the first time, she looked forward to embracing it, embracing herself and whatever challenges it may bring. As the sun rose, painting the sky with warm hues, Eila stood by her window, watching the world awaken. She no longer feared the daylight or the eyes of the world. Stepping away from the window, she graced her bedroom door, ready to stride into the future, with her head held high and her auburn hair gleaming under the rising sun. This is where Eila's story begins, at the end of her hiding and the start of her living. A life where she will walk tall, own her truth, and let her unique beauty shine, knowing that every step forward is a triumph, and that she, Eila, is a force to be reckoned with.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!